all kind of arguing with each other. They all think they have right to a certain spot. So we're going to really work to streamline that for next year and make sure everybody knows exactly where they're going, and probably all in one spot. So it also makes it easier for the posse. So it's a great opportunity for us to earn additional revenue. And like I said, we're still working on some bugs. But a major thing that we did identify this year is that we gave the posse more spots. Or attempted to. I would say we actually did. The revenue went down just slightly, so we're looking into what happened there, but what that indicates to us is that there's a slower turnover of cars, which truthfully is actually a great thing. What that means is that our ancillary and per cap spending is going to be up because people are staying with us for longer. So we like that.
That was noted by the sheriff. I was actually out there parking as well. They didn't see them leaving as often and as quickly as they were. They were staying later in the day and all the way into the evening, so they didn't have that opportunity to turn the parking lot over and sell additional spots.
And a challenge that we've had over the years is we very clearly identified that we have two distinct fares. We have a day fare and we have a night fare. In trying to build our programming, adjust our programming, we're trying to blend that. I think there's always going to be an element of that when you have concerts. It's just a different crowd. And that's fine and great and generally contributes to lots of ancillary revenues in the food and beverage area. So no complaints there. But again, trying to make sure that we can get people to blend from day to night and or come back or whatever. We've been working on that over the years. I think this is starting to show that what we're doing is going the direction that we want. So to go to food and alcohol, we had an amazing year, another record-setting year in terms of our food and alcohol. Food sales were up fairly significantly. We had about 4 or 5 new vendors with new options that we haven't had in a while. Some came in with very big sparkly booths, which we love. And it seems silly, but it makes a world of difference when somebody comes in and just looks like a pro. They had their booths lit up, colorful, and their sales reflected that. So those sales, the food sales were up. Our alcohol sales were also up for a number of reasons. The biggest is that we went out to contracts, so we went through our RFP process and have a new provider. Oregon Beverage Services has joined our team. That started in September of 2016. So they are our provider throughout the year. The contract is far more beneficial to us than the previous agreement. And these guys, this is their specialty. Alcohol sales is what they do. And they can focus in and hone their skills to really help us earn more money. And they did that in a number of ways. We added points of service. We added specialized products. We added some new concepts. We have not had hard alcohol at the fair in many, many years. We introduced it again in a very limited fashion at what's called the Build Your Own Bar. I thought that was kind of a funny play on BYOB. And it worked very well. We saw a lot of people really happy, gained us a couple new sponsors. So between that, Widmer Wonderland, which is also a new partner, Widmer Brothers Brewing, came on board. And then a couple of other little pop-up points, new tap house concept, really, really beneficial to us. So on that next page, you can see the food and alcohol sales and gross, significant jumps between 2016 and 17. Our food went from 588, 365 to 635, 551, which is a pretty nice jump there for, especially considering the increase in attendance.
As far back as our records that we have access to, that's the highest food sales we've ever seen.
And then alcohol, you can see, went from 108.18 to 144.470. So it's always of concern to us that we make sure that we don't have over-intoxicated patrons. And so seeing an increase like that without having instances of over-intoxication, which generally you always have a couple, and that did happen again, but it was great. I mean, very well taken care of, very well identified. Security was awesome. ID check was awesome. I think it was a very successful year on a lot of fronts, and we'll continue to work with them again to make sure that those experiences will thrive next year. Agree?
I agree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If you look at the bottom one, daily food and alcohol sales, this is something we like to take a look at in conjunction with our programming, with our concerts. We just kind of like to track where we are. We look at the weather, the ticket sales. Really, really big increases there throughout each day. Solid on every one of them, so pretty awesome to see. Wednesday is a little lighter. Friday, you can see we went from 139,522 to 185,409. That was by far the biggest concert evening. and everyone had a good time, shall we say. So, so that I think that contributed to that.
Yeah, let's lean into the weekend.
Yeah. Commercial vendors. So Sid mentioned our vendors. We have gone through years of challenge, years of adjustment, kind of taking a look at who are we selling to, how are we selling, where are we trying to put them. And this year we had a nice solid jump. This is the 4th year in a row we've gone up in revenue for our vendors. So we went up to $100,370, which is a roughly $10,000 increase over last year. And we went from 88 vendors to 101. One thing I do want to touch on is in here we mentioned the route and save. So we, by moving to July, have adjusted where we sit in terms of the other county fairs. Other county fairs have also been adjusting. So this last year and moving into the future, we will be sitting in between Jackson County and Washington County, which is great for us because it creates a nice route up the freeway. So last year we introduced the route and save with just Jackson County, and that was basically a 10% discount on your booth if you booked with both fairs. The person who was working on commercial vendors felt that there were some challenges, but as we've looked at it a little bit more since this report was written, we realized it was actually 25% of our vendors took advantage of that, and 20 of those 25 vendors were new to our fair. So we feel like that for a first year run at it was really solid. So we're going to continue that for another year and perhaps look at adding Washington County into that partnership. Logistically, we're not sure how that'll work, but that's the goal. So on to entertainment, which is always a fun one. We introduced a brand new program this year called the VIP Experience, which a lot of fairs and festivals are doing. That VIP Experience consisted of a lounge that had appetizers, it included parking, included fair admission, a dedicated cash bar just for those 100 patrons, so they didn't have to wait in line or leave the concert venue, and restrooms within about 5 feet, also helpful, and comfortable seating. So we partnered with Aaron's Furniture or Rentals. They brought in the couches and coffee tables, and then we had some bistro tables, and just kind of created a fun experience. We sold out within, I think, the first month of having our tickets on sale. So definitely something we'll be looking at doing again for next year. We did keep the price point really, really low, just to see how
it worked
and see if we could knock it out of the park the first year. So this year we will be doing it. Corey and I have been working on the layout of seats, the ratio of VIP seats to standard seats. Standard seat sales have sat in about the 60% range on average for the last 4 years. So we are looking at lessening the number of standard seats, adding another VIP tent, potentially having a tiered system. So one VIP tent will perhaps be more expensive because it includes more than the other. So just playing around with numbers and making sure that we can still achieve the revenue goals that we set for ourselves. But this year we had an interesting phenomenon is that our ticket sales went up by 587. Our revenue went down. And that is something we've talked about over the years, is that it's largely dependent on the artist that we can book. Sometimes we'll spend more on an artist and they still can't command the ticket price that we would like them to. And so what that means is we just kind of take a little bit of a hit. And so in looking at 2016, we had 2 artists at $50 and $40, 2 at $45 and $35, and 1 at $35 and $25. 2017, we had 2 at $45, $35, 2 at $40 and $30, and 1 at $35, $25. So our top 2 shows were already kind of starting at a loss there. So still a nice solid amount. We're looking at about $107,000 in revenue from our concert sales. So nice and solid, but about $7,000 down from 2016.
Is classic rock still that's pretty much it, isn't it?
pretty much.
And
Yeah.
country. Classic rock and country are our 2 strongest.
Yeah.
Country is more fickle,
Yeah.
I will say, and more difficult to book.
Unless you get luckier than hell with Barry Church.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll have a lot of
That's exactly right.
That was the luckiest thing.
That was
I've
one of the
seen.
luckiest ones we've seen
Ever.
in a long time.
Yeah.
But
Some
last
of my
year,
friends think we should get Los Lonely Boys.
Those ones.
I think you might be up there in the spending category.
They may be
They're
rather
not as lonely as
expensive.
they used to be.
Who are
They are country, right?
And Brett Michaels is the most confusing artist that there is right now. So
But I will say this, of the 5 artists that we had, he was the nicest. I mean, just the most pleasant human, so lovely to his fans. really went
Good.
above and beyond some of our other artists to make all the people in the meet and greet feel welcome.
Did an incredible meet and greet with,
Yeah.
That's good.
with the band.
Good.
So he was a lovely
His
dude.
music is just confusing to me. I don't know what he wants to do.
I'm sure he knows. Country, rock.
He's everything.
Yeah, I love that everything was like.
Yep. So you can see that our ticket sales did drop a little this year. Gained a little this year. The revenue, like I said, dropped a little. So that is in large part to the 400 VIP experiences that we sold, is that increase. And like I said, we kept that price point below the highest from last year. So a little light on our part probably, but I think it was worth a shot to introduce it, to get people used to it so they could see what they were getting. So that next year we can raise that price and try to increase our ROI on that.
Did Loverboy have the highest guarantee?
No, it was.
Leanne Rhymes?
No.
No, really?
Was it Brett Michaels? Attendance-wise, Loverboy Survivor was by far the biggest
Yeah.
night.
Yeah.
They sold out. But yeah, I want to say they were higher in
Yeah.
our scheme, but
Yeah.
I think Brett Michaels was actually
Okay.
the highest.
All right. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
You never know where people
I
are
know.
going to fall on
No,
that
I
chart.
agree.
It surprises us sometimes what people are asking, but
Yeah, but you have Eye of the Tiger working for the weekend. Come on.
Yeah.
right. So again, we take a really good look at our grounds entertainment and try to balance the age ranges that we're looking for. Something we've struggled with over the last few years is what we call a wow factor. The reason being sometimes the wow factors cost basically half of our grounds entertainment budget. This year we scored really and ended up with Freestyle Motocross. That was half the price of what we had back in 2011, which was the last time we had them. They did a stellar job.
Those guys were incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
Yes.
just-
Amazing.
And crazy, I think.
Yeah, I know. It's like, oh my gosh, okay, you're letting go of your motorcycle 50 feet in the air. Yeah.
I know.
And then grabbing a hold of it. Yeah, it's like-
On concrete, no less, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
But they proved to be successful again. People love it, and we have already booked them for 2018, so that's great. We also added, on the other end of the spectrum, a couple more for our tiniest of patrons. So we added the Barnyard Adventure, which is a free area where parents can sit and their kids are kind of contained in a small area. It's more of like a playground type of thing. So it's not sand anymore; it's corn. It's like a little corn pit that they can play in and other types of activities. We had a storyteller in there. And then we added the toddler zone. So for a number of years, we've worked with the Lane County Breastfeeding Coalition. I think that's right. And they unfortunately did not have the staffing this year. So we added Toddler Zone in. Not only did they come with a breastfeeding and diaper changing station, they brought toys and activities. Again, another contained area where parents could sit and take a breather and their kids could play and know they're not going to make a run for it across the parking lot. So very well attended. We had it inside in the air conditioning, so that was also well
Very,
received.
very popular by the mothers looking for a little bit of a timeout.
Yep. We did make one change to our senior social this year, and we changed the name. So at the end of 2016, AARP approached us and said, hey, we'd like to come in and help you with this event. We'd like to change the name. We'd like to try to adjust our audience to 50 plus instead of 70 plus. So they came in and they wanted to change the name to the Senior Celebration. We went through a number of iterations on that one. And then we moved it to the auditorium from the Wheeler so that we could put the Granges back in the Wheeler and adjust the flow. It worked wonders. Thank you to those of you who were there and participated and helped serve and greeted people. It's always a fan favorite. And I don't know if you noticed, but there was things like yoga demonstrations and chair yoga and vacation stuff, so very well attended. It's tough when you add an outside entity doing your programming. You lose an element of control. It also causes a little bit of chaos when they don't quite understand your facility or how things work in the grand scheme of things. So we're not 100% sure we're going to go that route again for 2018, but it certainly added a nice element to that event, livened it up and kind of revitalized it.
Got a
So
lot of good feedback.
yeah, so we're definitely looking at it, and hopefully AARP wants to come back with us. That's the other piece we haven't heard from them as of yet. So the other festival that we have in the had in the Wheeler that we moved to the auditorium was STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Also called STEAM, also called STREAM. So we had a 3-day festival. It was proving challenging for them. Lane ESD and U of O are the programmers on that one. They were having trouble getting volunteers. They were having trouble getting participants, so they asked to limit it to 1 day. I think there was some success in that. I also think from their end, I think we're all looking at the vitality of that festival as we move forward because so many of those programs have developed around town and in the state at this time. So while we feel like it's a valuable asset to the fair, we're not sure that it works in that context because it's not our expertise and we rely on them to do it. And if they don't have the team of volunteers they need, then it doesn't work as well.
And volunteers for 5 days from 10 a.m. to 9 or 10 p.m. is very difficult for a lot of entities to come up with. Something we've seen pretty common.
Yeah. Carnival is another area that in 2017 we saw a massive increase. This is something we've seen over the last 3 years since we switched to pay one price bracelets for any day of the fair. The contract expired, so we went out to RFP. Fantastic Carnival, who has been our provider for many, many years, came to play. They really wanted to win the account. They upped their percentage that they are paying us yet again.
I think as far as we know, we're the highest paid percentage from any of the fairs in the state of Oregon.
But they're fabulous. They train on safety. The president and owner of the company has done a number of different things in all of the industry specific.
Excuse me, Mr. Coles. Right, be that. Somebody, too many interruptions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Thanks, Sid.
Very much.
So in terms of their sales for this year, our pre-sale went up 21%. We held prices steady this year, which was great. And we switched partners. Last year we worked with Walgreens for our brick and mortar sales point. This year we worked with First Tech Community Credit Union, who is trying to increase their market share here in Lane County. There was some concern as to the fact they only have 3 actual physical brick and mortar locations as to whether or not that would work. But they knocked it out of the park. First year run at it, they sold 2,341 bracelets. We've already had conversations for 2018. They have some suggestions for helping them, what would make it easier on their end. But they loved it. They were thrilled. And I'm thrilled to have them back as one of our sponsors and partners. So that 21% increase in our pre-sales also contributed to a 14% increase overall, which then contributed to a 14% increase in what we received, which also was slightly due to the increase in percentage that they're paying us, but an all-around solid year with our carnival, and we look forward to another one next year. So you can see that our revenues have been increasing over the past 4 years. That major jump between 2014 and 15, I just want to point out, is the year that we switched from a single-day rag bracelet to an any-day rag bracelet, which has helped in so many ways. It's evened out our attendance. It's clearly increased revenue.
And that rag bracelet also expanded the hours of operation. So it used to end at a certain time of night, now goes all the way to close. So those families that couldn't come until after work or the evenings now get the full value of that by being able to ride that all night until they close.
Okay, exhibits and livestock. This is a little bit where the 4-H discussion comes in, but I'm going to try to just go through what we experienced this year. We had a very solid year. We had an interesting phenomenon as we were looking at our numbers, which was that the number of exhibitors that we had decreased by about 300. I think that is due to a transition in staff. So we had one fair coordinator. She moved on to another department, and our new coordinator, I think, found some errors in calculation and the way that things were being reported. So we believe that these numbers are going to be more accurate moving forward. So this will be the point that we're going to go from, which is 1,103 in 2017. The interesting thing there is that the number of exhibits barely decreased. We just saw a small decrease, and that was primarily in the creative departments. We're already looking at ways to increase that. We have some brochures that have already been distributed by our creative exhibits. The livestock entries were up, and so we got to put our brand new shiny pens into use and fill them up. We really are maxing out a lot of our spaces. Some of this discussion will come up as we look at the youth fair and the 4-H and the way that they interact moving forward. There are some challenges. There have been some challenges. The programs are a little too parallel for what the initial intent of the youth fair, Lane County Youth Fair, was. We have open divisions for adult and youth, but this is something separate. So we are kind of taking a look at how that will go. The board's in active discussions about that, so it may change for 2018. It looks like it's more likely for 19. I'll leave that one if you want to talk about it later. But I do want to point out that we paid out $32,590.68 somehow for premiums this year, and that is giving back into the community for everyone who brings things. The larger payouts are in animals, just by nature, and we are actually looking at increasing some of those jackpots and premiums for 2018 to rebuild our open programs in some of our areas. Cattle has been a challenge in our open areas over the years, so we're looking to kind of try to rebuild and bolster those as we move forward.
Yeah, and as we kind of clarify the 4-H role and their opportunities, and FFA is actually coming back within Lane County as well, so we'll be looking at their programming to see what they want to be involved with. We'll be looking at adding some open youth, extra areas in the open youth to provide some of those experiences for the kids.
And finally, we will end with sponsors and partners. This year was an interesting year. We lost some, gained some. So we had First Tech Federal Credit Union, ServPro, Whitmer Brothers Brewing, Heritage Distilling, and Aaron's Furniture all came on as brand new sponsors this year in various areas. Some of those were cash, some of those were in kind. Some of them I have on 3-year deals, so awesome moving forward. First Tech, like I said, has already committed for 2018. Whitmer Brothers is most likely. Heritage Distilling is one I've partnered with for 3 years, and I've already met with Aaron's, and they're on board as well. The cash went down a tiny bit, but the in-kind increased dramatically this year. It's a tough call as to whether or not that's going to happen each year, so they both benefit us. The cash is great. It just adds to the revenue line, but with the in-kinds, we can also decrease our expenses. So a number of our sponsors do both. And then we also have media partnerships. And the media partnerships are separate and above what is worked out with our media, our ad agency. I also have partnerships with all of the medias that are separate trades and work towards something separate. So we get a lot of the ideas to get as much coverage as we possibly can. And so that has proven very successful and quite a value to us in many ways. We also worked with Food for Lane County and Lane Blood Center, which is now BloodWorks. Again, this was the second highest food drive in the last, since we started in 2010, gathering more than 25,000 pounds of food in just 3 hours. And that special we will continue again. It's their second largest drive that they have, and it comes at a time when they really need it because a lot of times drives drop off in the summer. So
it's been a nice ad for our Sunday afternoon. It drives people through the gate, especially those that don't want to pay that entry fee, and they can get in free by donating food. Really provides that experience, and our numbers on Sundays have shown pretty good response to that. Plus, we get the opportunity of donating back 25,000 pounds of food, so that's a great opportunity.
it is. And they're great partners, and they love to come out and they bring all their volunteers. It's a great day for us. And
How much food is that? How, do you fill a truck?
15 to 20 pallets.
they bring the pallet boxes and
Pallet
drop them
boxes.
off.
Nice.
And we station them, we work through, X gate gets 12 boxes, this gate's slower, we're going to put 3 here, and then we move them around during the day if they get too full.
Awesome.
Yeah. So BloodWorks has been a very successful promotion for us and for them. They also need a lot of blood during that time of year. Unfortunately, this year was a little rough, but in working through with them, what has happened is Lane Blood Center has transitioning to BloodWorks, which is no longer a local company. They combined with the Puget Sound Blood Bank. And so now the calls are coming from Washington. It's not, it doesn't have that same local feel. They're experiencing some struggles with that. And I think we saw that as well on our Piper Pass. This was by far the lowest drive that we've had as a partnership since we started it. So we're going to be looking to help as much as we can in terms of getting their numbers back up, and hopefully we can get them back to where they were when they started, which was their highest drive and gave them the ability to actually, they had so much blood they had to ship it off to other banks. So we'd like to help them get back to that, especially knowing it is one of their their biggest need at that time of year. So kind of a slight little bummer there, but we're committed to working with them to do anything we can. And the biggest and most fun part, this is just the good news, is our revenue estimates. The way that the budget is, the budgeting cycle, we will have budgets, have staffing that for 2018 that ends up going into 2017. So these numbers are tentative, but right now we're looking at a total revenue of a little over $1.3 million and expenses of just barely over $1 million for an estimated net of $348,270. And we went ahead and included 2013 through 2017, so you can see that we've steadily been growing in our net. Corey and I worked really hard on keeping the expenses tight, and then gaining as much revenue as we can. So I feel like I'm going to pass it back to you, but I know I'm proud of that.
Yeah, no, that was obviously one of our goals when we established that we wanted to have the friendly, fun, family atmosphere, but at the same time it had to be a viable event. And so when we took a look at what the numbers were back in 2012, and we didn't feel confident what they were, that 2013 year was the year that we really got a sense of where we were at. And then we were able to take that and the experience that we got from that and then start building on it. So increasing those revenues, finding those partners, expanding that ability to get new revenue, at the same time cutting back on expenses and finding ways to cut those expenses back. So those expenses have been pretty flat. And in fact, maybe decreased in the last 4 years. It's been the revenue that's been increasing, and that's where we see the difference. And just on a side note, I haven't seen the numbers this year, but I typically talk to some of the other fair managers just as a kind of fun to see where we're at. Normally, the highest one, at least that will report it, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, is Deschutes County. They're usually in that $300,000 to $350,000 net range. Has usually been the highest. So for us to even get close to that, I feel pretty confident and pretty happy about that, considering what facility they got to deal with over there. Their dollars.
And I do want to reiterate what Corey said, that our staff is awesome and is really conscious of the goals that we're all going for. So when we say, okay, we need to watch our expenses, they're really good at taking a look and making sure they help us stay within where we need to be. And it's nice. So
Yeah, it's been critical into our success, and that's the work that they do. So questions, thoughts, comments, feedback?
So question I have is, so this is towards the livestock side, and so it looks like to me that there's, I don't know if reorganization is the right word, but it's going to be managed maybe a little. It's going to be managed differently. But then you mentioned FFA maybe bringing more of a presence. So my question is, are you confident that there's room for additional growth on the livestock side? As you all know, I grew up in Roseburg, and I was 4-H in Douglas County, and I will tell you that the livestock facilities at Douglas County Fair are very, very impressive, and even to this day they're very impressive. So that's my question. So know that the 4-H seems to be having a bit more of a presence these days, but FFA, that's something I've not heard in quite some time. So what are your thoughts as far as facilities are concerned? Is there room for growth? I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, and to start off, no, we're almost maxed out in our spaces and equipment as it is, and that's why part of our discussion with the fair board and with the various entities is the youth fair, as it was designed, was supposed to take the place of when 4-H didn't have an opportunity in Lane County. Their members were going to other counties because 4-H had lost its local funding. Now that 4-H is back and that program is growing, at some point in time we've got to discuss the fact that those were never meant to happen at the same time in the same place, and that's where the discussion is right now. So we're working through trying to figure that out moving forward. If in fact we can drop off the youth fair and the 4-H grows, that will create some additional space for FFA to get their foot in the door. Now at some point in time we would like to have the problem where that has grown enough that we're out of space again. That would be a great problem to have.
Well, and I bring that up because it's actually kind of exciting to hear that, and it would be fun if we could make sure that they stay here in Lane
Right,
County
right.
and not feel the need that, well, it's not we'll take our livestock and so on and so forth down to Douglas County instead, and where they capture the revenue, not us. And so that's why I asked that question. But so I appreciate that. My hope is that you'll clearly keep the board and keep us up to speed on this, not only with the annual meeting that we have and the report, but just to keep us up to speed, just find out if this is something we need to have a larger conversation about as far as facilities are concerned. And so, but it's actually great to hear, I think, and maybe kids are realizing that there's more to life than Xbox, so that's fine by me. So that's great. Thank you.
I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about the problems with, or if there are any problems with, insurance on fair activities. I know as the dollars get bigger and bigger, good news, they're getting bigger and bigger, but there might be risk, I don't know. And it's hard to imagine that there's much risk in displaying a painting, but people could fall down or maybe flying through the air 50 feet in a motorcycle. I don't know. So obviously one is maybe more risky than the other.
Sure.
I'm just curious whether there is there's a requirement for insurance, and are the requirements for those, is that in keeping with, I guess, industry standard? Is it too high? I've had some complaints from constituents about the cost at the Ronald Reagan Center in Washington, D.C. requires $2 million of coverage to rent that facility so you can have, I would imagine, a raucous political event that could involve throwing things. I don't know, but apparently their level of required insurance to rent that facility is $2 million, where it's higher than that for some Lane County rentals, and that ends up costing the person that is doing the renting a lot of money, and that prices people out. I'm just curious what your view is on that. Are we pricing people out on insurance? Are we setting appropriate levels? Are we high or low by industry standards?
Well, that's a very large question and discussion, and yes, we have had that at multiple levels and regarding multiple things. So we have, here in the last year and a half, been moving forward with what the county has recommended, which is 2-4 levels of insurance. Typically, before that, we were at 1-2.
All this means
1 million, 2 million, yes. One per occurrence, 2 million aggregate. County has recommended that we go to the 2-4. In fact, that was actually something that was done years ago, but it took some time to get everybody to work up to that and start getting that word out. What we have found is it appears to be high. We have talked to multiple fairgrounds and event centers within Oregon and the Northwest. Most of them are at 1-2. Some are actually at 500,000 in one or 500,000 in two. We appear to be the only ones that we have found so far that are at the 2-4 level, and it is having an impact. We are getting phone calls every week from whether it's our event center folks that are renting the building to our fair vendors, saying that's unreasonable, it's too much, it costs me more than the booth space I'm paying. We have found ways to try to guide them into finding cheaper resources for that. Some of them have been successful, some have not. Some have ended up just going somewhere else. So it is a challenge. Now, for this year's fair, after spending a year dealing with it and losing a few, and mainly it's the small vendors, the folks that are just selling or handing out pamphlets during the fair. It seems like the risk of a paper cut is not requiring an extra couple million of insurance. So we went through a thoughtful process with Lisa Lacey and Tim. The county does have an opportunity where a department director can waive insurance requirements if needed. And so we came up with a list of what we thought were low-risk vendors and passed them along to Lisa and to Tim. And Tim did go ahead and approve that for this year's fair. So we were able to get some vendors in that maybe we didn't in the past. And this was a chance for us to see how that worked. The problem is it's very time-consuming and difficult to spend time trying to vet those, and at what criteria do you vet them as to what the risk is. So that will be an ongoing discussion, and it is going to continue as well. So.
And certainly anytime we go against recommendation of the risk manager, we take that very seriously. But, and what that comes with is that if you go against the risk manager's recommendation, then the department takes on the liability for anything above the insurance that you put in. So with that being said, I feel that Lisa was a good partner with us through this process, and we did come to a solution that worked for us.
Well, my concern is that it has to all be balanced, and I'm just hearing from these smaller people. I'm not hearing from the larger ones.
Yeah.
I'm hearing from the smaller ones.
We hear from the larger ones.
We hear from them
You
as
hear
well,
from them too, okay.
but they are able, especially the ones that have either other events or other things that they can tap into. They can get those amounts down because they're tying into some other event or policy. Mm-hmm. So typically they piggyback on something else.
Yeah.
But to be fair, we did lose an event that has been in our facility for more than 40 years. And one of the major things that lost them was the insurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the people that have contacted me at least said, well, we did go out and look for different types of insurance, but that it just wasn't there. I mean, the market for, imagine, again, I'm not in the business of buying too much insurance, but $2 million versus $5 million is more money. So I didn't know that much about it, and so they're like you said, their booth rent or their space rent is less than their insurance.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a way that you could. Maybe there's the insurance industry itself has a way to grade the risk, so that if someone is, selling explosives, maybe they're going to have a different one than if you're selling, acrylic painting.
Yeah, so I anticipate, similar to what we did last year, this will be a topic in a meeting that we will sit down with the risk manager and we'll go over these opportunities and find if there are ways to, blanket lower it with certain criteria, maybe.
What if we bought the insurance? What if we bought
we
$20
do buy
million coverage?
We buy fair insurance, and it costs us about $32,000 every year. And that's part of the discussions we're having is what is that covering versus what additional things. So that's all part of the discussion that we are looking at, yes.
Thank you so much.
If I may, Commissioner, because you're self-insured, you're always on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And the money's going to come from somewhere, and I understand that. So I'm a small vendor, but I don't vend at the fair. I can buy event insurance for a single event, or I can buy a whole year, and there's a huge impact. It makes more sense to have all year because of insurance and blah, 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 and all the big things. I understand the big differences, but it's always in somebody's best interest to be insurance rich, because you just don't know.
Gary?
Well, as the liaison from the Board of Commissioners to the Fair Board, I'd like to say that I've been involved in a lot of different activities and associations, but I've never had an association that has brought me so much personal satisfaction as seeing how well the Fair Board is run. You're at the top of the game from my perspective. I know there's some issues to work through. But in any organization, those are there. So great job in that vein. I also appreciate Randy bringing up the reality of institutional memory, how absolutely critically important. We all know this from association we've been in, that you have certain people over a period of time who give a great deal of themselves, and in that process learn a great deal about an organization, how it works well, where it may not work so well. Institutional memory to me is the backbone of many, many organizations. So when Randy was speaking to Sid's 15 years of service, I am so supportive of making sure that brain trust, that experience that one brings after a long period of association, is not lost due to a term limits or moving on. I think the door should always be open for their guidance, whether it's ex officio or emeritus. That would be up to others to determine. But I, for one, think that just has such strong merit that we should strongly consider that. And I thank you, Randy, for bringing that up, because it's critical to an organization. Thank you.
So I have one particular question. So we now have, over the past 5 years, a little under 900,000 in net. What has been the policy of the Fair Board when it comes to placing that in reserves? Is there a reserve target, and is there a policy around the use of reserves for improvements, et cetera? That brings the question up is, okay, we're making money. What's happening to that money?
The way that it's all budgeted, at least the way it's been budgeted, is just all together. So that and the event center has always been budgeted together in one single fund. And then what we have in reserves, we've been putting aside each year, and that's part of what I'll touch base with on the second piece of today, is just our capital plan. But in general, we have saved or put away approximately $1 million in our own capital reserve plan. And then we've been paying into the county's capital reserve plan each year, which just came back this budget cycle. So the intent is, moving forward, we're going to generate a long-term capital plan and spending plan of how we're going to fix, renovate, replace the buildings. So that's all tied in together. So right now we've got 2.5 in capital reserves, 2.5 million. And actually, in the last one budget cycle, for the first time ever, I believe we had an operational reserve. So it's not very large. It's only about 120 or 150,000, but we have started an operational reserve as well.
Yeah, and you should have one.
Exactly. And that has never been there, and so that's been the goal. So all these get budgeted together and then put in the reserves.
Yeah. I didn't know if any of this went into operational reserve either, because there's always a chance we could have really crappy weather or something like that. And have
that's where some of it's starting to go now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, well, I guess then maybe we can move, if there's no other questions about the 2017 fair report, we can move on to the next steps here.
Thank you. I'd just like to briefly say it's been a pleasure to work with Rachel and Corey and Tim, who attends all of our meetings, for their invaluable input and assisting us and leading us. Really, as I look at this year, we spent over $1 million to bring family entertainment to Lane County. And it was a collaborative effort because the residents of Lane County and elsewhere brought back about $350,000 to our coffers. And I think that speaks very highly of our staff in putting together a very good fair. I really thank them. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the update of the facility assessment and where we're going to head from there. And I'll turn that over to Corey.
Yeah, since you guys, I know, get updates with strategic planning and various other forms, and I know this has been included on there, but I wanted to spend just a little bit today making sure that both boards were kind of aware of where we are in the process and kind of where we're heading to. We did receive the first piece of our assessment project and that was a condition assessment of all the buildings and grounds. That's right here. That's 400 or 500 pages. I've been digging through it in my free time whenever I can, and there'll be a very thought-out discussion with a whole bunch of people, and we'll go through it with a fine-tooth comb. But it identified a backlog of deferred maintenance, which we knew was there. This is not new. We knew we have old buildings, we have issues. And to bring them up to current standards and fire and ADA and so on and so forth, we knew it was going to be a big number. We were, in one sense, afraid of that, but we can't be afraid of that. So I'm going to hand you out just a kind of a summary. This is not official. This is just kind of some of the things that we can get out of it, but in general, it has some reasonable, accurate numbers, and I just want to make you guys aware of kind of where we're at, potentially. Hopefully I brought enough. I had to support the logging entrance.
It's a renewable resource.
That's right.
And it's a recyclable
That's right.
resource. So
You're good. Thank you.
green,
Man, you're counting right.
almost more green than the electron.
So, just on the front page here, I just wanted to show you a little something. So this is basically taking some information out of this large report, right? Again, this is not in any official form or anything, but I wanted you guys to see kind of what we're looking at. This takes by building and gives us a recommended spending between now and 2026. So that gives us a certain amount of time to try to get up to standards. And you can see in the far right-hand side, the total column all the way down at the bottom, that's $27 million. So obviously we don't have enough in reserves. But I did want to point that out.
You got a few years to get there.
Well, we got to start saving a little bit. But some of the ways, obviously, that we'll be able to look at this, and we'll be looking, to involve a lot of people, and there'll be a lot of discussion moving forward in how we do this. If you just take a look at, for instance, the convention center, which on here is listed as the event center, that total amount is just $8.8 million. And obviously, I think if we take a look at what our revenues are per building, we'll be identifying opportunities for the largest return on investment on which buildings we end up working on. But this does give you kind of a general scope of that large amount that's sitting out there. And we just can't be afraid to say that it is literally out there. We are spending $200,000 to $300,000 a year in just routine maintenance. At the same time, every year, like I said, we have been putting $200,000 to $300,000 in the capital fund. So it's not that we're not spending money. We just haven't spent enough in the past to keep up with where we are now. The second part, and part of the basis for where we're going to go with this thing, is that we're going to start a market demand study, so a market analysis. We're going to have a contractor come in, we're going to do an RFP and identify somebody to come in and take a look at our facilities. They're going to take a look at the type of events that we have, the type of spaces that we have, what's being used, what's not being used, and then they're going to go out and they're going to talk to our current clients, our past clients, travel Lane County, and any other entity they can probably think of to see what opportunities are out there to expand our business and generate more revenue coming in. We would like to take that information, pair it with this capital plan, and then come back and say, this is our long-term business plan of how we want to get to where we need to get and the opportunities we have to either replace, renovate, or add, change some of our facilities to better generate more revenue.
I'll be, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll be interested to see how you deal with Wheeler Pavilion.
Yeah.
Because, as that is right now, it's not marketable in
It's
certain
not.
times of year. Because it's not air, it's not,
Yes.
No, it's not.
it's not climate controlled.
It's not climate controlled, it's not marketable.
Yeah,
right.
it's not marketable,
So we haven't
so-
put very much money in there. So again, that would be part of that big discussion is what do we want to put our money into?
Yeah.
And at
If
what
it's more
point in time?
climate controlled, what would be the market for that? Is
Exactly.
How do you judge that, seeing we haven't been able to market it in the past?
Yep. So that's part of why we want to go through this process to identify those opportunities before we start down that capital road. Because again, we don't want to start down the capital road and do something and then find out that it's just
There's
not
no market
marketable.
for it, yeah.
Right.
Is an option to potentially raise it
From my personal, I think an option to do that with any building would be an option, and I think we would not want to shy away from that. I think we can't be closed-minded when we look at this. Otherwise, unless you guys know some dollars out there that I don't know, I don't see any way that we're just going to magically come to this end number without thinking outside the box, and that would include raising them.
Because the other thing that I'd also encourage you to look at is if we did have space on that site for, say, a hotel.
That would be a key part of that market demand is, yes,
Yeah.
we will identify whether
And how
that's
that
a
might
fee.
change
Exactly.
the whole facility
Yep.
around quite a bit.
I would anticipate that part of that study that comes back will recommend that we contact them and get a feasibility study on whether there are any hotel chains that would be interested.
And when you look at just kind of what we've experienced and the feedback that we get from events that don't come to us, the hotel is an issue. Also, the way that our facility is constructed, the convention center, the meeting rooms are on the four corners. So certain size events, it's just not quite the right fit. If we had something that could condense them or a way to partner with the hotel that could allow the use of the super big spaces with their meeting rooms, that's what we've noticed is really missing for our facility. The market demand obviously will tell us for real, but that is when we work with Travel Lane County on proposals and pitches, the biggest challenge and hurdle we have is transport. Clients don't want to pay from transport from hotel to us, so even though we're 5-6 blocks from the Hilton, it's a challenge. How do you get all of those people to us at one time without making them drive their own vehicles?
Right.
So it is
And
definitely...
for conferences or events that they want to fly in for, which is of value to Travel Lane County, it's almost impossible to get enough buses and get some sort of schedule down to get them bussed over to a different facility.
Yeah.
At some point in time, the logistics just become too
Easy if we
difficult.
had Uber and Lyft, but
Well,
Right.
yeah,
that's a whole different conversation.
That is a different conversation. So that is definitely one of the options I believe will be identified.
Because Jay took my exact thought right out of my mouth, and that was the potential idea of a hotel.
Yep.
What that may look like. I mean, even from a transportation standpoint, it's on the MX line, the new MX line. I mean, there's some real potential benefits, and even from the proximity to coming off the Washington Street
Yeah.
Bridge and straight in.
Yeah.
So it's so anyway, that's why I brought that up. I mean, and even if you felt like the Wheeler Pavilion is useful for certain things, I would highly suggest that raising something of that age and building new is so much more cost effective in the long run anyway.
Yeah.
And so that's why. So I think there's some options there, but. I'll leave it. We'll leave it up to the experts. And
Well, that's just
especially
it.
when you get your
And again, I just wanted to let you
your
guys know
studies
that
in
we're
place.
still working
Yeah.
on this, and it's just taking time.
No,
but-
I think it's frankly, I think it's better to take your time and do it right.
Yeah. It'd also be interesting to see how this is all going to work with the 2021 Worlds and Tracktown and stuff like that. So.
And, if there happens.
Are you guys holding the space open for that time?
Well, we actually are open
booking
at that
events?
point in time. We're waiting for the highest bidder. No,
Yeah. But, I mean, it just seems like, that there's going to be a need for much space in the area during that event.
I would anticipate there'll be some sort of need. We haven't identified exactly what it is yet,
Whether
but
it's awards banquets
or whatever.
or exhibit area and all that stuff.
Yeah, and hopefully if we get moving on this and we get some information back, that may give us at least a start to consider talking about 2021. If there are any pieces of this that meet that time frame, as well as then other goals, that would be a nice opportunity, especially if it's a public-private partnership.
Yeah. So, sorry, I jumped in there and interrupted and probably took
That's the gist of it. Again, I just wanted you guys to kind of get a sense of this. The second page is just a similar thing. It's just broken down by capital, deferred maintenance, and you can see that deferred maintenance is $13 million. It's huge. whereas the capital renewal is even less than the deferred maintenance. So it just confirms what we've been talking about for years. We have a lot of deferred maintenance. We know it. It's there. And then the last page is just another way that we can look at some of the information that's just by priority. Priority 1, 2, or 3, and those are categorized by immediate, essentially life-threatening danger versus...
At least we got priority 1 covered in our capital.
Yeah. So, well, and again, that's a little disheartening to see those numbers when we've worked so hard over the last 3 to 4 years to actually build a capital reserve. But we just are extremely pleased that we have what we have. So we appreciate that.
Go ahead, Susan. So another question I have, and again, it relates back to the 2021 World Track and Field Games. So Lane County is represented very well on the overall group, because Greg Rickoff now has been named to the steering committee. And the steering committee is actually, that's the hands-on, that's the kind of the everyday, if you will. And I've been named to the advisory host cities committee. And so Lane County's got a good presence here. And one of the questions that came up, and this is what we really need to think about. Not necessarily that, not just the 10 days of the meet and the month that 230 countries or so are here. Mm-hmm. What happens after?
Right.
And if we do this right, all of a sudden, this area becomes really a really exciting potential focal point for people from around the world. And so that's where it's kind of exciting to think about what would it look like if a hotel convention center is built here. The proximity, whether it's on the MX line, maybe they will get around to finally figuring out the Uber Lyft issue. You can actually, the way it's written out, Uber Lyft is legal. It's just regulated to a point where I don't think it's cost effective right now. And so who knows, hopefully things will get worked out. But this is where you have the Night Science Campus now, developing out. I mean, there's so many things going on here over the next 4 years that it's, frankly,
well, I think the time
I'm thinking to myself, man, this is an exciting time for you to be.
And I think it is, and that's why we're extremely thrilled to be working on this process. And we started it actually 2 years ago, and I wish it was a little further. And that's neither here nor there, but it is exciting. And I think those opportunities to work collaboratively with anybody that's on those committees, with Travel Lane County. Travel Lane County's already done the study.
Yeah.
I mean, in one sense, not specific to our facility.
No.
And we want somebody to specifically look at our facility because we have unique buildings. But they've already done this. They've already identified that need. Yeah, there is a need for a hotel and a conference center and meeting room space and all that stuff. But we got to go through the process.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Any other questions on the capital plan for Corey? Okay, so
I think we're nearing completion. We thank you for inviting us to this annual event, and it's our pleasure to present to you the 2017 fair, which I think was a tremendous success. We look forward to working with you again next year and hopefully bring back even a better fair. It's an interesting dance to work the fair in conjunction with the event center. And many times I think that it's an inherent conflict of interest. But yet that dance is always able to seem to work its way out. Just like Sid, we'll invite you to the implosion of the Wheeler.
Let's not do a kingdom.
Try to get the right insurance protection.
We'll notify the neighborhood association. But it's interesting to watch the meld of the two facilities or the two areas. Even combining revenues and allocating expenses, that's a dance. Do you really get a fair value added from our 1 week event? I don't know. But yet, I feel comfortable in presenting these figures to you, so you get a feel for not only the overall challenges, but what we go through as a fair board. Thank you.
So I'm here to adjourn, right? So the order of the meeting, I apologize for being gone for 45 minutes, but I just one moment to express my thanks to your work on the Fair Board. And very specifically, I've seen the improvement, not incrementally, exponentially, annually. Every year the fair is that much better. I was out of town for this year's fair, so I was not able to attend, but all reports were that it was once again exponentially better than even the year before. So I'm pleased and proud to call Lane County Fair Lane County's own fair. So thank you.
I can just make a...
In fact, I'm not going to take the chair. I'm going to let Commissioner, since he was here, please continue and finish the meeting, Commissioner.
I just want to take a moment also to thank the Fair Board for your work. And Randy, I know it's difficult to kind of, massaging the numbers, assigning expenses and all that stuff, and does that 1 week event bring value to the overall facility? It brings value to the community. I mean, whether or not we, that 300,000 is massaged in some way, and whether it's accurate because we're not assigning the correct expenses against the fair, there's still value in holding that fair annually in this community. Whether it's the youth side and the exhibits, and having the animals there, and working with Youth Fair, 4-H, and now FFA, and to the Granges and helping them kind of keep themselves, viable organizations, to just, the family portion of it, the way you guys are growing the family portion. I mean, I've been able to attend the fair pretty regularly. I make the senior celebration now. I've got the name now.
Very nice.
Just about every year, which is always a fun event. I kind of love being there for that. And I always love, I'm starting to see the same seniors year after year when they come up and they recognize me and come talk to me and stuff.
Well, you're getting there.
60 on Monday. I'll be 60 on Monday, so I'm basically going from here to packing for going to Hawaii. So, but it's been a great event, and it's really grown, and the family-oriented side of it, we've been, for the past several years, buying. My wife's got a very small company with part-time employees. We don't have a lot. We don't have benefits because it's only 5 employees. One of the things we do is we buy fair passes for their families in the summer, just as kind of a gift, and that's been a huge hit with them. Fair passes and bracelets for the kids. Because they're all in the teenage years, kind of in preteen years. So the kids disappear and ride rides all day, and the moms, go off and have fun, going around to all the various vendors and stuff like that, getting, sitting in the massage chairs and everything else, and the stories they come back with, that's part of how I've been judging the fair too. Is what do they come back and tell me about their experience? Mm-hmm. And every year it's been better and better for them, and I just think you guys are doing a great job, and numbers are showing it, but also just in my impressions of being there, and my employees' impressions, or I should say my wife's employees' impressions, and their families' impressions, and the joy they get out of those passes. You guys are doing a great job, and the value's there, whether we're actually accounting for the money perfectly or not. As a community event, it has got immense value.
Thank you. I think that's why we serve, and I appreciate you expressing it in such an elegant manner. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you guys for your service, because we all know you guys are really getting a high salary for this.
It's the glory.
So if there's any other further comments or questions?
No, I was going to say the salary pays about as well as the Cottage Grove and Springfield Mayor. It's a good one.
Well, they get fair passes. You guys didn't.
I got a parking spot.
I'd like to say thanks for Gary attending our meetings every month, and I think the communication is really critical. That's how you grow, the right communication. So I really appreciate that.
Well, no further business for the board today. Then I will adjourn today's meeting, and hope you guys reconvene next Tuesday without me.
Without you.
I'll see everybody else probably next year. So thank you.